Okay, what if I told you that we are living through a revolution right now? One that's going to be bigger and way faster than the Industrial Revolution. I mean, that's a pretty bold claim, right? But that is the core thesis from the venture capital giant Sequoia Capital. They're calling it the cognitive revolution. And they've put a massive number on it, a $10 trillion disruption. So let's get into what that actually means. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at why this thing is moving so incredibly fast. Then, we'll unpack that $10 trillion market number. After that, we'll dive into the new investor playbook, what's happening now, and then what's next for building AI's future. And finally, we'll zoom out to see the promise, the productivity, and, of course, the peril. All right, let's start with that big, flashy number, $10 trillion. Now, it's really important to get this right. This is not some prediction about the future stock value of AI companies. No. What Sequoia is saying is that this is the size of the existing U.S. services market. All the lawyers, accountants, software developers, nurses. And that is the market AI is about to completely reshape. Okay, so how do you even begin to justify a number that big? Well, to really get it, you have to understand the single most important part of their argument: speed. We're not just talking about another tech trend here. This is a massive historical shift, and it's all happening on a timeline that is just incredibly compressed. And this visual just puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? I mean, look at the top half there. You go from the steam engine to the modern assembly line. That took more than 200 years. We're talking multiple generations. Now look at the bottom. The GPU, which you could call the steam engine of our time, shows up in 1999. The first AI factory is just 17 years after that. And the cognitive assembly line, that's expected within this decade. What took centuries is now being squeezed into just a few decades. It's wild. So the big question is, why? Why is it happening so much faster this time around? Well, it really comes down to a simple idea: atoms versus bits. The Industrial Revolution was all about atoms, physical stuff, building factories, laying down railways. That's slow, it's expensive, it's physically demanding. But the cognitive revolution? It's driven by bits, by software and data, and you can copy bits for basically nothing and send them anywhere in the world instantly. That's the difference between slow linear growth and explosive exponential growth. Right, so we've got this incredible speed. But how does that turn into a $10 trillion opportunity? Well, it's because this revolution is aimed right at the very heart of our modern economy, the knowledge worker. And this table here is where that huge abstract number starts to feel really, really concrete. That $10 trillion market, it's basically the combined salaries of all these knowledge workers. I mean, just look at these four professions alone. You've got registered nurses, software developers, lawyers, accountants. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars in annual salaries, just right there. That's the value that AI is set to either help with or, in some cases, automate. And if you want to talk about opportunity, well, this chart says it all. You hear about AI everywhere, right? It's all hype all the time. But look at this. AI-driven automation has only touched about 0.2% of this gigantic market. That means 99.8% of it is still completely untapped. We are at the absolute very, very beginning of this thing. But here's a really critical point in Sequoia's thinking. The idea isn't that AI is just going to come in and steal a piece of the existing pie. No, the idea is that it's going to make the entire pie bigger. Think about what happened with SaaS, software as a service. It didn't just replace the old software you bought in a box. It made powerful tools way cheaper and easier to get, so more people could use them. It actually grew the whole market from about $350 billion to over $650 billion. Sequoia thinks AI is going to do the exact same thing for expert services. And if we're going to see a shift this big, we need a new way to think about productivity. It's not going to be about how many hours you work anymore. The new metric is something called flops per knowledge worker. Now, flops are basically just a way to measure raw computing power. So the question changes. It's not how long did you work, it's how much AI horsepower can a single person control. And Sequoia thinks that number is about to jump by 10x, maybe even 1,000x. That's a whole new definition of work itself. Okay, so if you're an investor and you're looking at this tidal wave coming, where do you even start? Where do you put your money? Well, Sequoia has pinpointed 5 key trends that are happening right now. These are the things defining the companies that are winning today. So let's break down this playbook. The big theme here is that investors are all about what works in the real world, not just in a lab.
So they're funding companies whose AI can, say, actually beat a team of human cybersecurity experts, not just one that does well on some academic test. They're also betting big on the basics, the picks and shovels of the gold rush. Things like providing the massive amounts of compute power everyone needs. It's all about practicality, real-world results, and giving workers more leverage. All right, that's what's happening now. But what about what's coming next? If you look at, say, 12 to 18 months, Sequoia has also laid out the 5 huge foundational challenges that someone needs to solve to really unlock the next wave of AI. We're talking truly autonomous agents.
And solving these challenges is really all about making AI more independent and, well, more trustworthy. Think about it. For an AI agent to be really useful, it needs a memory, right? It needs to remember past conversations and tasks. That's persistent memory. It also needs to be able to talk smoothly to other AIs and, of course, to us with a natural-sounding voice. But underneath all of that are 2 giant challenges. How do we make sure we can trust these systems to be secure and safe? And how do we keep the technology open so it's not all controlled by just 1 or 2 massive companies? Whoever cracks these problems is going to define the next decade of tech, for sure.
Okay, let's pull back and look at the big picture for a minute. We've talked about the theory, we've seen the market, we've gone through the investor playbook. Now, let's talk about the sheer financial force behind all this, the actual productivity boosts we're seeing today, and the very real risks we have to face.
I mean, the amount of money being poured into this is just mind-boggling. This chart right here shows the projected spending on infrastructure from just the 4 biggest tech companies. The trend was already pointing way up, but because of AI, it's expected to almost double to more than $400 billion by 2026. This is, without a doubt, the single biggest infrastructure build-out in human history. And it's not just the tech giants either. It feels like the entire financial world is on the same page here. You've got McKinsey estimating a $4.4 trillion annual economic impact. Stanford's AI index saw almost $34 billion in private investment just for generative AI last year. And get this, PitchBook says that AI is now soaking up around 60% of all venture capital funding worldwide. The money is absolutely flooding in.
Okay, but with all that money being spent, is it, actually working? Is it making us more productive? The early data says a resounding yes. This number, 40%, comes from a study at MIT. They found that AI can boost the performance of highly skilled workers by almost 40%. That's not a small improvement. That is a massive leap in productivity.
And this, to me, is one of the most fascinating pieces of evidence out there. We're seeing this shadow productivity economy pop up. What does that mean? It means almost half of all employees in the US are using AI tools for their job, but their bosses don't know about it. A lot of them are even paying for these tools out of their own pockets. That's maybe the strongest signal you can get that people are finding real, immediate value in this stuff way before their companies have even figured out a plan. So all of this brings us to what is really the central tension of this entire era. You can boil it down to 2 words: velocity versus veracity. On one hand, you have velocity, this incredible, almost frantic pressure to go fast, build things, and deploy them so you don't get left behind. But on the other hand, you have veracity, the absolute need for these systems to be accurate, to be safe, to be ethical. And that right there is the tightrope that basically everyone in this space is trying to walk. And make no mistake, the stakes could not be higher. These aren't some far-off sci-fi fears. These are real, unavoidable risks we have to deal with right now. We're talking about massive job disruption for starters. We're talking about misinformation on a scale we've never seen before. The World Economic Forum actually named it one of the biggest short-term risks to the entire globe. Not to mention cybersecurity, bias, the list goes on. Trying to balance all that incredible promise with these very, very real dangers, that's the great challenge of our time.
And that really brings us to the final takeaway here. All the evidence suggests this isn't a question of if this is going to happen, but how and when. That cognitive assembly line that Sequoia talks about, it's being built as we speak. The Industrial Revolution gave us the 9-to-5 workday, the modern office. It shaped our lives. This revolution is going to create entirely new ways of working and living. So really, the only question left for every single one of us is, how are you going to plug in?